It's a Grace Over Grit podcast where we celebrate women's journeys and we are empowering each other to thrive in our personal lives, our career, and our businesses. We are two women who are passionate about connecting and inspiring our communities. So, welcome aboard.
Welcome. I am Monique Fisher,
I'm Alita Anderson.
and welcome to From For Sale to Sold.
Yes. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what we do in our day-to-day lives, which is being realtors.
Right, exactly.
We have a brokerage, which is Mosaic Realty, located in Bolingbrook, Illinois. So we want to just give you a little bit of an inside look as to what we deal with our clients, and also to inspire anyone that's looking to list their home for sale, to kind of know what you have to, what the process looks like, and answer any questions that you have. So we'll walk you through the process, talk about some things that come up as questions that we get often.
Some fun stuff.
Yes, some stories of what we've dealt with. So we'll just kind of keep it informal, and we'll start at the very beginning.
So you call one of us and you say, you know what, I'm ready to sell my home, right?
Yes.
And so you have, I'm sure, done research. You have looked on the internet because there's 3 houses in your subdivision for sale, and they got 450,000. The other ones got 475. So you got that brick paver outside patio, so yours worth 500. Have you heard that?
Oh, never, never. Oh gosh.
So Monique, I want to sell my house, and I want to sell it for 500,000. Okay.
That's all you say?
Until I get there and see what's really going on, I say okay.
You say okay, gotcha.
So I do again, and if you saw the one that we talked about with buyers, again, it's all about having that consultation up front,
is,
right?
Yes.
And in that, I like to ask people, tell me about your house. Tell me what you love about it, because I get to see how attached they are, or how emotional they are, and how difficult it may or may not be, to really, and I don't want to say difficult, because again, this is an emotional process. So I want to see where people are.
Yes. And I think it helps to reel them in, because
I hate saying the word reasonable, but reasonable in terms of
realistic.
I want to see how
realistic
they are.
Yes. Because because I think a lot of times with real estate in general, but especially in when people are listing their own homes or thinking of listing their own homes, you don't necessarily know all the criteria that play into how the price is the price.
Right.
And it's funny because I've dealt with clients that are selling their home and also in the same process buying another home.
Yes.
And they're like two different people.
Oh, yeah.
Because the expectation of what they want their home to look like when they're on the buy side is very, very high.
Yes.
And then sometimes we're talking about their property, they just feel like people should be lucky to get it.
Right.
So
because I created memories in here.
Yeah. So you gotta have to have that little give and take, and
right.
You do have to be very neutral. I would say you have to be very neutral and help them to be more realistic, because they don't see houses every day.
And that is the word. It's realistic. It's realistic. So
so after you meet your agent, now you said that they've done their research. Sometimes people have done no research and they're just like, I want to sell this house because I just do, and so it could be a different conversation.
It can be, but the majority of them have been on the internet looking at other houses right there, and calling you with what they think the price of the house should be. So I'm saying all that to say that our very first step is to do what's called comparative market analysis, or you may hear CMA for short.
Yes.
So that is really the first step. And we as realtors, we go out typically within a mile radius, right? Depending on where you live. And we are looking for houses that have similar attributes to what your house has. So if it's a 4-bedroom, we're looking for 4 bedrooms, maybe, or there may be some that are 3 bedrooms with a loft, but we're looking for comparable square footage size, room size, so that we can really help make a determination of what we think the house is worth.
Yeah.
Now, we can do that online, right?
Mhm.
But there's nothing like seeing it because some people keep their houses up well and some people don't.
Mhm.
And so all of that affects, right, what the market is saying your house is worth.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I've had instances where I've done the CMA like a preliminary
Right.
before I've seen the
Before
house,
you
and I give
see
them a
it.
range,
That's right.
and we kind of walk through like, okay, so you have upgraded your kitchen and you have upgraded your bathroom, and you have new windows throughout, whatever. So we're going to say, okay, so it's going to be on the higher end of this range, or you've been here for 37 years and everything here is original to the 37 years.
Right.
So we might be on the lower end of the spectrum. But I like to give them a range so an idea, because also I think that determines how realistic and how much the person actually wants to sell.
Right. Right.
Because like, no, I want to sell my house for $652,000. And it's like, and if I can't get $652,000, I'm not selling. So if you give me that basic information and I do the CMA like you mentioned, and then the average sale of the house on the top end is 450, you know what? We might not even have that conversation when we need to drive out. No, and a lot of times it's a matter of people sometimes have to sell or they need to sell, and they know they're kind of being their own roadblock.
Roadblock.
Yeah.
Right.
So you kind of sometimes have to dig a little deeper too to figure out where you cut. Because I always like to ask people, well, how'd you come up with that number?
Right. Right.
How did you come up with it? And then they can walk you through their math and how they came up with it, and then you can walk through how the CMA math works.
And part of it is of our job is to help you determine, what's important. I'm getting ready to tell a quick little story. One of my first listings.
Oh goodness.
Oh God, I just love this gentleman. But he was like, little lady, go in that bathroom and look at them fixtures. Gold, 14 karat gold. I was like, what?
Why would it 14 karat gold?
I don't know. What? And he was like, that's it right there.
Sorry, you should melt those and go get your money.
So, I mean, that's a story I always tell because part of our job is to let you know what's important. So the 14 karat gold faucets, and we're in the era of nickel and silver now, that it doesn't hold the weight or value that you think it would, right?
Maybe in the gold market.
In the gold market. So we moved on from that market because he did that 30 years ago. So okay. I'm saying that to say certain things hold value for the homeowners.
Oh, definitely.
That doesn't necessarily hold the value for a potential buyer.
Mm-hmm. And you have to think of it too, is that the way that people live in their homes are different. Mm-hmm. Because I have been in places where the home has the exact same layout and is utilized completely different. So what you see as an advantage, or what you see that makes sense for your family or for you right. in that space, somebody else might see it as a nuisance instead of it. So you kind of have to look at that too. And that's why you kind of have to just stick to the things that are tangible, the number of bedrooms, the square footage, the updates in the house, things of that nature that are tangible instead of things that are going to be subjective to whether or not you find value in it, exactly. Or if the buyer finds value in it. The other conversation, like you mentioned, going out to the house and getting it ready for sale.
Right.
I always like to tell people that you want your house to look like you don't live there. Yes. Meaning a model home. You go to a model home, you're like, ooh. But if you really, the next time, if you get a chance, you go to a model home, just stop and look around and imagine, like stand in the kitchen and just look around and be like, okay, if I was about to get my day started with my, coffee, breakfast, whatever else, what could I do? Okay, yeah, you got a coffee machine there, and be like, okay, there's nothing there because it looks great and fabulous because it's not lived in. Right, it's exactly. Not touched. Things aren't out. There's no clutter. Right. It's clear. The window shades are all up, so all the sunlight is pouring in, glistening off of the appliances and the countertops. So it looks great. But nobody lives there, so there's no traffic. So imagine, and I always like to warn or prepare my sellers, you're going to have people that are going to be setting up listings. You're going to have keep your house clean. Not that people can't keep their house clean, but also make it look like you don't live there. The easiest way to do that is to declutter.
Yes.
So if you take all those things out, and you might have an area where it'd be the garage or a certain closet, you're putting things in and out that you don't really use on a day-to-day basis. And even for some of the things that you do use on a day-to-day basis, put them away.
Put them away.
Because although you can see past that stuff, sometimes buyers can't.
They cannot.
So they can't really get a full look at the space. You can't see their things there because your things are everywhere.
Right, right. And I used to tell people too, like maybe keep a little cute hamper or basket in rooms where if you're getting a showing that day, you can just toss things in.
Yeah.
And put the little top on and it just looks like a cute accessory. Right. And then you know exactly where your things are. And then when the showing's over, you can pull them out and put them back on your countertops, etc. So we do have little tips and tricks to help you keep your house in show ready, as I like to call it, condition.
And it's good to lay eyes on your home too, because a lot of times, because I mean, even in my own house, there'll be things that I know need to get done, but it just needed to get done for so long. You don't even see it anymore. So like, so I see that you updated this room, but why is that one wall not painted? Or, you know, that corner over there, like, oh, what happened was we ran out of paint. We're going to do this. We just never came back. And now it's a bookshelf, but part of it you can't see. So you're like, okay, babe, we're going to need to fix that. Because if you're coming in on fresh eyes, you're like, okay, it looks weird, one. And now you're like, okay, well, what else is back there? And what are you hiding? And, and it may be nothing, but then it just starts all these questions that we could just avoid if we get everything ready.
And first impressions are everything.
Gosh, yes.
Even walking in. So a lot of us use our garages. A lot of us don't even use our front doors.
Very true.
So to even look at that, your front door may be weathered or beaten up. And, you know, a fresh coat of paint on that and all the cobwebs over the light or the Ring doorbell that you don't see on a day-to-day because you're going in through the garage. Those types of things, having your landscaping done, you know, the grass cut. If it's wintertime, you know, shoveling the wall. First impressions, just pulling up, looking at that house. First impressions are everything.
Yes. Because people want to see themselves living in a house and they want to pull up to a house that they're like, oh, I'm excited about. Not like, what is this? What is happening?
Yeah.
If you have small children, toys and things like that are just kind of everywhere, you're going to have to find a space to put all those things in. And that's one of the things we walk through with getting your home ready for a sale. What does that look like? What does it look like? What could you do? So we'll definitely walk you through
and
that.
We can give you a window, you know, we can say, you know, they have to schedule 24 hours in advance.
Yes.
You know, especially if you have small children and pets. We get it. We understand. So there are things that we can do to help you get that home showcase ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always tell people too to pay attention to, because like you said, a lot of times people are on the internet and they'll be like, oh, the house down the street sold. This. If you see open houses or things like that, take a look at those. And see what impression that you get. When you walk through there and you're like, ooh, I just saw this word. And they'll be like, oh, we have something similar, but you don't see it because it's yours.
It's yours.
So start doing some of those tours as well to get an idea. But then I also help. Like when you do it, they're like, send me a picture. I'll be like, hey, we're going to do this. This is, what do you think?
Right.
Yeah. So we want to be realistic because a lot of times I'll go through and like, oh, we're going to paint this room. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I'm like, okay, so it sounds like you need about 3 weeks. I'm like, no. I want this on the market in a couple weeks. We're going to do this in a week. And I'm like, all right. So we're going to check in on this date. And we have all these things done. Then we'll go to list on these dates. And they're like, you know what? It was way more work than what I thought. And that's fine too. But we just want to stay in communication to make sure everybody's on the same page.
So it sounds like you help your clients put together a plan.
Definitely. A plan and a timeline.
Correct.
Because I want you to understand that if we need to list your house on April 15th, then this needs to happen by April 5th. This needs to happen by the 10th. And then on the 13th, this is what's going to happen. And then, you know.
And then we can have that.
Because if any of those things don't happen, it's going to throw off the next thing, which means it's going to push your list date back.
Right.
And I understand things are going to happen. So I just like to lay out that timeline so that they're aware. And they're like, oh, we missed the window. So if you're very adamant that on a certain date, this house needs to be listed by this date, we need to make sure we don't miss any of these milestones.
Right. Yeah. That's important.
Yeah, definitely. Photography. So this is, we're talking about going online, looking at homes for sale. One of the big things that I do for any house that I list for, we have a professional photographer take pictures. And that's important because first impressions. The first impression isn't when they walk through your door, it's when they see your home online.
Correct.
And even with the photography, we'll give you tips and tricks to make sure that the areas are clutter free. What should the rooms look like? The photographer is able to capture the rooms in the best light, to see the dimensions, to see the use of it, even the yard, different things of that nature, so they can see all the pictures. So if you have a realtor and they're saying they don't do professional pictures, one, I would be a little concerned because the goal is to get your home sold in the least amount of time for the highest dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
And that means it needs to show in a good light.
Yes.
If you've ever gone online to wherever and you're looking at homes for sale and you see you see the person, there's a picture in the bathroom, you see them, and then you see the person in the mirror. I'm not taking your pictures. I'm your realtor. I'm gonna help you sell your home, but I'm not gonna be the person taking the pictures. I have a photographer that does that. And you want those professional relationships. We'll introduce, we'll make sure we get everything scheduled and do that on our end. But that's something I feel is needed and shows in a really good light for your home.
Absolutely. Again, that you go back to first impressions. That's part of first impressions. And I would tell you, I have canceled photos.
Oh, me too.
Because I've gone to the house because I like to get there. I actually used to be a home stager. So I have pillows and accessories. Girl, I got all kinds of stuff in my house, right? To help just, pops of color for homes and that type of thing. And I have gone to homes where the house is just not ready. And I have canceled. And they have been kicking and screaming. And I'm like, nope, we're going to reschedule. Because again, I do give you a timeline as well. And so now you're not going to hit that date because we're going to have to do this. So, this whole process too is about communication. Had they called me and say, you know what, Monique, we're a little stressed. We didn't get everything done. We need to push it out, which we ended up doing anyway. But it's a back and forth about communication.
Yeah.
Because I was there and and they were disappointed, but that's what I did. And they did not like me for it. Not in the beginning, but in the end, it worked out.
And I've had them too, where it's like, it's not to the point I have canceled before, but sometimes I'm getting there and it's not to the point where I need to cancel, but it's still just not right.
Right. Yeah.
So then I'm talking to the photographer like, okay, you're gonna start there, and I'm running from room like,
to room, and we will do that. Too.
Making sure those beds are crisp and doing all that, and making okay, we're gonna put this down here, take a picture from this angle. So we're running around doing that too. So it's not that we're like, oh, this is not my job, I'm not doing it.
Right.
We want to help you, but at some point, sometimes it's just not enough time to be able to get everything to show in the best light. Right. And it's all about communication. Other people are like, okay, well, do we have to shoot the basement because I was putting all stuff in the okay, we won't shoot the basement. It's unfinished anyways. Like we'll just tell it's unfinished, but that's going to be the storage area. So we talk through all those things. Communication is huge and key in there. And remember, at the end of the day, you want your house to show the best light.
The best light.
So if they're looking,
just like those pictures you saw, that's how you want your house to look.
Yep. And a lot of questions we get is how are people going to know my house is for sale? What are some of the things you do to market? What are some of the things? There's depending on the area of the home, we do open where the home is located. I think where the home is located, we have open houses. We have sometimes, and it depending on the area, it depends. Like Bolingbrook is really big. You talked about Twilight.
I do different times. In Bolingbrook, Twilight. And what I mean by Twilight is we usually do like a Friday night open house because most open houses you see are Saturday and Sunday. We may do a Thursday or a Friday night, from like 5 to 7. And that has been really successful in this market, in this area, because people are coming after work and they were coming with their families. When you have kids who are committed to all of these activities on the weekend and you have church service on Sundays, a lot of times it's not convenient. Yeah. So we're finding that Thursday night or Friday night twilight time has worked real well in marketing homes in this area.
Yeah.
And the other thing I do too is I do a coming soon campaign. I will send out flyers in the neighborhood, to the neighbors to let them know that this house is coming on sale. I send things out to agents to let them know this house is coming. So that's part of our marketing plan that we do too.
Yeah.
So that's very important.
And then everything is tied also to social media. So you'll see that on there for social media for people that are looking to purchase homes. They'll let syndicate it, so they'll see when the open house is. So all that is marketed as well. And it's funny because you mentioned mailer signs. A lot of times when I'm doing open houses, I'll be like, "Oh, how did you hear about it?" And sometimes people, "Oh, we're just driving by," or
Yeah.
this. So people are like that doesn't work. Everything has to be online. It's a combination
It
because
is.
everybody has different ways that they see things. So I think you want to hit all bases.
Right. Because
To
we
make sure.
post sign, we have signs like
Mhm.
for Mosaic, and our agents put signs up maybe in a 2 to 3 block radius around to direct people. And a lot of
Mhm.
people see those. I have one of those flag things that
Yeah.
I put out in front of the house that does all of that. And people see that from the
Yeah.
street and they come. So these are things that we do to help to market your home as well as social media
Yeah.
posts.
Yeah. So as we go through that, so let's say, okay, we've gotten the open house. Now people are pouring in. They see the house online and they like it. So now there's an offer on the table. What are some of the things that you tell your seller once they start getting offers?
I tell them, well, first of all, especially if in multiple offer situations,
Mhm.
that means that, say we had an open house and we got 3 offers
Mhm.
that weekend. Um, I tell them we're looking for what's important to them. It may be closing dates because
Mhm.
people always think it's price, but of course, money does speak. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, but it's not the only thing. It's about
Not
what
at
the
all.
seller needs to do. Some sellers may need to rent back, or
Mhm.
if they're having a house built and they want to close, and then they need another 2 weeks or a month in the house. There's all different things. So I ask them to look at the offer in terms of earnest money. We
Mhm.
talked about that in the buyer's part.
Mhm.
Again, that's kind of a signal of how committed or serious I am about my offer.
Mhm.
We look at that. Closing dates. I'm trying to see what else.
Closing dates, tax proration,
Tax prorations.
is big in certain areas, and then also inspections or as is condition. That's a big one right now too.
Right. So
Yes.
that depends if we put the house on as is
Yes.
or
Hmm.
not. But let's explain tax prorations a little bit.
Yeah. So in the state of Illinois, we pay our taxes in arrears, meaning that this is 2025. So this year, the taxes that I'm paying are actually for 2024. So as a seller, let's say it's June and you're selling your house. That means you've lived in the home from January of 2025 to June of 2025. So that's 6 months of the year that you've lived there. So that means that you're responsible for those taxes, right? Well, the tax bill is not going to come out to the following year,
Till
and you've
2026.
already left it left the home. You've already sold it, so you wouldn't get that tax bill. So at the closing table, what happens is that time period is basically put into an escrow to say when that tax bill comes out, these funds are going to be used to pay those taxes. However, we don't know what the tax percentage is because it's the next year. So in an offer, a lot of times you'll see 105% or 110%, depending on the area, which means, okay, we're going to look at the taxes and say, okay, they are this amount now, but I want to put 105% of that amount, an additional 5% in that amount because I anticipate taxes going up for next year, so that my client's not responsible for paying for the time that the seller that the seller was there. So let's say, like Monique mentioned, there was a multiple offer situation. You might have somebody that says, I'm only going to ask for 100%. So if your taxes are 5,000, I'm just asking you to put 5,000 in. You might have another offer that says, I'm going to do 105%. So they need 5% more to put into the
Right.
pot. And then you might have somebody that says 110. So then now the seller is putting in 10% instead of just a regular 100. So it'll depend. So then that's less money that the seller has to bring to the table. So that might be to their advantage to say, okay, we're going to look at the 100% tax
Right.
proration because that's less money that we have to pay out.
Right. So on 5,000, say it was 5,000,
Yes.
just for numbers. 100% is they put 5,000 in
5,000.
escrow,
Yeah.
but the 110% is they're putting up 5,500.
Right.
So the sellers do look at things like
Mm-hmm.
that too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then you can mention close date. It might be something. I've had this situation come up a couple times where the close date is very important because the seller might need to close by a certain date to get into their property.
right.
Or another thing that's been big too is rent back, meaning
Rent back.
that we're going to close on this day, but we need to stay in the house for another 2 weeks because our house isn't going to be ready or something of that nature. So some of the terms you can ask, what's important, if that's something that your buyer's able to do. As a seller agent, I'm going to, communicate that's important to my clients.
Right.
So if you could do that, that would make the offer more enticing for them to accept.
For them to accept.
Mm-hmm. So we kind of walk through what it looks like, the inspection appraisals. Now this on our end, on the flip side, as a seller's agent, when an inspection, so the buyer side will do a home inspection. And during that home inspection, they have the option to ask for certain repairs or credits, or they can just say, you know what, everything's good. We don't need anything. We're going to move forward. Now, they could, let's say the buyers come to us with a list of things that need to be done. We're really looking at things that are going to be health and safety related.
Yes.
So not just, I want the living room repainted because I don't like that color gray, whatever. Nothing like that, nothing cosmetic. But on the seller's end, they could still have the option to be like, yeah, you're asking to repair those things. It's going to be about $3,000 for those repairs. We're not going to pay the $3,000, but we'll give you a $1,500 credit. So we'll go half. We'll do a $1,500 credit towards the repair of, whatever you're asking for. And then the buyers can say yes, or they can say no, or they could come back and counter and say, would you do 2,000? We can go back and forth until we either come to a solid yes or a solid no.
And sometimes sellers say, no, I'm not doing anything. And again, it's all about you. Mm-hmm. That we talked about that in the buyers, that we find these things out in the consultation too. So if that's not something you're willing to do, then we need to have a conversation up front, because maybe we need to put your house on the market as is.
Yes. Yeah. So there's certain things we identify, like, okay, and they're like, yeah, no, I've seen this happen a lot too with properties that are inherited. You're like, we're going to sell it and split the profit, but we're not putting any work into the house. We just want to sell it. So whatever's there is there, and you can price it accordingly. So in some instances, we do price it accordingly, meaning that when Monique mentioned the CMA, we'll take into account that there's some work that needs to be done. So you might see, and that's always like to point out to people too, when you see, especially on the buyer's end, but also on the seller's end, when you see a range from like $250,000 to like $425,000. Okay, if this house is this $250,000 in an area where most of the houses are for something, 9 times out of 10 it's gonna need some work.
A lot of work.
So the price is taken into account. So if you're on the $250,000 end, your expectation should not be that you're going to be able to then go in and then say, and we want a credit for these repairs and do these different things, because they've taken those things into account with pricing it. Now, if it was priced higher and it still had a list of things that need to be done, then that makes more sense as far as negotiating. So you got to kind of keep those things in the back of your head too. And that's not you personally, but that's the conversations that your realtor should be having with you to kind of walk through, okay, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense, and then move forward.
So what if we have a house on the market and it's not really, we're not getting any offers? Mm-hmm. What do you typically tell your seller?
I always start the conversation, even when we're doing our consultation, is that we both can come to a number and agree on this number and say, this is what we want the price to sell at. At the end of the day, the market dictates what the house is worth.
Right.
Meaning that if we'll use that example. If I put a house on for $250,000 and it's literally is worth $400,000, we're going to get so many bids that it's going to go up. So it's not going to sell for $250,000. Right. The market will dictate and sell for what it's worth. On the flip side of that, if I put a house on and I list it at $450,000 and it's really only worth $250,000, that doesn't mean just because I slapped that price on there that people are like, oh, well, they said this was worth this, so it has to work. And let's just say you happen to get somebody that agreed to that, even though that the area and that the CMA does not dictate that price. At the end of the day, you still have to get an appraisal, so it still has to be worth it.
Yes. Unless they're paying cash.
I was going to say, unless you get a cash buyer. So those are instances. But to back up just a little bit to answer your question, as far as if it's on the market, we're not getting, first indicator, are we getting any showings?
Right. That's what I'm saying. If we're
not getting any showings, a couple different things can happen. A couple things could be happening. One, let's take a look at what our competition is. So look in the area and see what homes are on the market. Okay, so if the homes are similarly priced, look at the market, conditions are way different, or conditions are different than ours. That could not be appealing when they're looking at a house that has, one house is 3,200 square feet and another one is 1,800 square feet, and they only have $2,000 difference.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Then you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna go for the big one. Look at that. I don't even need to look at this one because it's too close in price. Who would do that? So you kind of look at some of those indicators. So it could be price. 9 times out of 10 is the price. The condition of the home, the way it's showing, and the price that it's set at is not matching up. So people are like, no, I don't even need to go see that because that doesn't make any sense.
Right. And that's part of that consultation that I'm saying, getting there too with sellers. You may come in with a number and I may have a number, but in the end, it's about you. And you go in with your number and you say, Monique, no, I want to put this on for $450, and I'm telling you it's only worth $420. We'll put it on for $450. But again, as Alita said, the market will dictate to you whether or not it is priced right.
Yeah.
And if you don't we say if in 2 weeks you haven't had any showings or only 1 or 2 showings in 2 weeks, we know that price is too high. And so then that we're having another conversation with you about what we can do or where we really think this price should be.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate too when you price that house too high in the beginning because you always chase the market.
Yes.
Right? You've gotten these, as she said, that house way too much. I'm going to see that house, or it kind of gets a bad
stigma.
Yeah. And so then people don't really want to see it. So it's best to go in and really talk with your realtor and understand when they come in with numbers, why they're coming in with those numbers.
Yeah.
Because you never, ever want to chase the market. It's a hard thing to do.
It is. And then it's like, okay, well, this house has been on the market for 66 days. What's wrong with it? Like, it could be nothing wrong with it other than it's priced too high. But now people
buyers feel like too, if they do come in, well, I really got some negotiation power.
Yes.
If you've been in this market for 90 days, yeah, that's a problem. Either a buyer found something seriously wrong with it, which you are then supposed to disclose, or I'm going to negotiate.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important that you price that house right, as closely to the market price as possible.
Yeah. And like I said, those are conversations that you'll have, and you'll be able to tell pretty quickly where you are in the market. And then feedback too, because a lot of times you'll get feedback from, if you do have the showings, you'll get feedback to say
from agents and the clients, and they kind of tell you, yeah, no, I think it's priced too high. Or you're priced the same amount as a house that doesn't have a basement, and even though the basement may be unfinished, why would I pay? Why would I pay the same price for this house and you don't even have a basement? So it's those types of things.
Yeah.
That are important to look out for.
Definitely. And then, so we kind of walk through the showings. We walk through, they've got an offer. We walk through inspections, appraisal. So let's say we get to the appraisal now. So we get to the appraisal, house is $350. The appraiser comes out, and then you get the phone call saying, hey, it didn't appraise.
It's undervalued.
What happens next?
Well, the seller has decisions to make, and it doesn't even have to be that much. So say it's $350 and say it appraised for $335. The seller you can say, to the buyer, well, I would like to still stay at the $350. And if they're getting a mortgage, and you would know that in the offer, that's usually not going to happen unless they've assigned some type of waiver that says, I will pay the difference, right? So when we were in a market in 2020 and 2021, that was very common to do. But right now, we're not in that type of market. And so you're not going to get people who are going to just say, yeah, I'm going to pay you that $15,000 more just because, right? So you as the seller have some decisions to make. Do you come down to the value price, or do you say hey, I reject this offer now and I want to start all over and see what else can happen?
Yeah.
So tough decisions to make.
It is. And it also depends too who the type of offer that has gotten the appraisal, because if it's an FHA offer, it's going to stick with them for 6 months.
It does.
So if you go back on the market, that appraisal is still staying with the property for 6 months. So people are like, oh, I'll just get another appraisal. But are you then just gonna wait 6 months? So it depends on what's important to you. Is it getting it sold? And if you look at it, if you have a current mortgage on the property that you're selling, if you're waiting that time period, how much money are you spending each month? So you really go through the numbers and see what makes sense. Right. Does it make sense just to come down to the appraised value? Could we split the different, whatever, see what we have, and see what you want to do and what's most advantageous for you.
But again, we help you to make those decisions. We walk through that with you. Mm-hmm. And then you can decide what direction you would like to go in.
Mm-hmm, so what else? Okay, so we get through the appraisal, then what?
So, well, once we get the appraisal, we're just waiting on the buyers to make sure that we're packing and getting things
I was
prepared
just about
to play.
I was going to say just that people always think that packing is going to take less time than it actually does. Baby. So I always encourage you to start early and often. Meaning, while you're watching your favorite TV show, get those boxes, start packing stuff up, especially stuff that is out of season that you're not using anyways. Right. Purge. Before you even go onto the market, hopefully you've purged some things that you were going to get rid of. Anyhow, hopefully. That makes it so much easier, because now you're just having to go through and pack things versus sort, pack, give away, throw away, all that. So that makes that process a little bit easier. But do not wait, because when they have that final walkthrough, your home needs to be in broom swept condition, which means it needs to be emptied. Everything needs to be gone. The things that are supposed to be there are going to be there, meaning if you said you were leaving blinds and curtains, those blinds and curtains are there. The appliances are there. And you need to be out of the house. Right. I've had a few different instances when we get there and people are packing. That doesn't work, because we can't head to the closing and you're still in the house packing, because now the ownership has transferred to the new people. That's not your house anymore.
Correct.
So you can hold up your closing by that.
Yes. Because home ownership transfers when those documents are signed at closing. So you need to have all of your things out of the home. Mm-hmm. Now, if I get there and I see they got 6 or 7 boxes, right, or and they got the truck there and they're loading, I'm good. But we've gone in where people still have rooms full of furniture, and you like, what is happening here?
I laugh because I had a closing. We were on the buy side. Mm-hmm. We went there to do the final walkthrough. When I tell you that house everything was still in the house. Beds were still made. Laundry was still in the hampers. Everything was there. And I was like, what in the world is happening? Like, did I get the days correct? It's like, wait, we are closing.
So the realtor didn't tell them?
Called the realtor to find out what's going on. No answer. I'm like, okay, what is happening? Waited a while. I had to call the attorneys, like, can you reach out to their attorney, see what's going on? The attorney had said, we've been trying to get a hold of them. They haven't signed the paperwork because they had given power of attorney for the sellers to sign. Yeah. We're waiting for them to sign it. We were going to call you. We don't know what happened. So then we were like, well, maybe something happened to the people, because why would all this stuff be here? It was 3 days. We heard nothing. I didn't hear anything from the agent. I didn't hear anything our attorneys didn't hear anything back from their attorneys, which means they hadn't talked to their client either for 3 days. So finally, when they came back, they had went on vacation, and wherever they went, they missed a flight, something else, whatever. So they came back and they thought they were going to be back and have time to pack, and they didn't. So now they came back. I want to say maybe it was a Friday or something. They're like, we're going to pack over the weekend and we'll be out. So the closing got pushed back. So yeah, they were just gone, and they were out of the country, and nobody could get a hold of them. They didn't know. They didn't tell the realtor, nothing. Nobody knew anything. So that's like the realtor. She was like, I really don't know where they are. I've sent messages. I've sent messages. Wow. I've sent this. So I was like, what in the world? Because
I haven't had that quite happen. That's wild. All I can say is wild.
I was like, what is going on? So it was really bad, because it was at a time when it was real difficult to get movers. So they had missed their moving window. The buyers had to pay a portion, whatever the bill was, because they scheduled the move, and they had started putting stuff on the truck and all that. So then they had to pay for storage, because their stuff
is on the truck.
So the sellers ended up having to pay for all of that, but it was a catastrophe. Like, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that happened. So they didn't have a place to go. Their stuff was in the truck.
Oh my God.
And it was literally about, yeah, it was maybe a week, or maybe even a little over a week from the time they
I'm
actually
sure because
closed
you
from the
need
day
time to
time
pack
move.
up a whole
Yeah.
house.
So they had to do all that. So they ended up having to pay for their movers. They had to pay for the hotel stay that they needed to be in for over there. And then they still didn't get to move right away because they couldn't reschedule movers because they were scheduled out. Like they didn't have any openings. So yeah, so it was a mess. So when we tell you timelines are important, they are important. Important ties into so many other different things.
Right. There's a lot of moving parts during this process. And
Yeah.
so that's why we're here. We're here to help you manage all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the other people who we check on everybody. We're like a project manager.
We definitely are.
And we just try to keep everybody on track.
Mm-hmm.
Keep getting updates over and over again. So but when we get to that part, if things go well, we're at the closing table.
Yep.
The buyer sign, they get the transfer of keys, and you, as a good prep seller, have moved out of the home. And your funds are transferred to you, and the new buyer gets their new home.
Yeah, the process is over. So you've survived.
You have survived.
You've hopefully gotten the dollar amount that you wanted to get, sold in the time frame that you wanted to sell. And yeah, you can go on to whatever the next steps are for you.
The next steps are wherever you're at. So again, if you're thinking about selling your home, the spring market has sprung.
It has.
But even if you're thinking about it from a year from now or 6 months from now, it doesn't matter. Reach out to either one of us and let us know that that's your plans, and we can help you get that detailed plan out and put some dates together for you to help you make that move to go for sale to sold.
From sale to sold. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on our social medias. We are on Instagram, we are Facebook, and of course on our YouTube page. So leave us some comments. If you've sold a home and you have some funny stories or tips that you want to share, please drop them below this video so we can share with our viewers as well. If you have questions or need any assistance, like Monique said, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to assist you in your sale of your home. So we're hopeful that you enjoyed this information.
Yes. Share
it with somebody that may be looking to sell their home. And that is it for now. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care. Bye-bye.